Hey there, welcome. It's time for the Gracious Guest podcast, and today I'm doing something a little fidgety, I guess, but I'm walking around in my house doing this podcast, my little notebook in hand, and so you may hear some movement. It's the sort of sounds of life. I've been sitting down way too much today at my desk, working on all sorts of projects or elements, rather, of a project that I'm working on. That's good stuff, but, man, I gotta get outside or something. It's a little cold, but I thought I would just sort of do this wandering around, maybe sitting here and there, but that's kind of the format for today, if you don't mind. And even if you do mind, I'm just going to have to resist you on this. I got to do what I got to do here. So welcome to the Gracious Guest Podcast. As I said, I'm your host, Mike Creevy. And if you've never tuned into this program before and now you're already thinking of shutting it off, hold on just a minute. Okay, I'm going to get to what the title suggests I'm going to get to in just a second. But let me just give you a little background here quick. This program deals with wonder. Wonder and awe. The moments that make us marvel, the things, the themes, the little behind-the-scenes things that we encounter in life, whether it's in movies or books or just daily experiences, a trip somewhere, whatever it might be, all those little moments in life when either we open it or someone else or something else opens what Dr. Peter Kraft at Boston College is referring to right now in a title of a new book of his as The Doors in the Walls of the World. I like that phrase. I like it a lot. That's a great book, by the way. I'm reading it right now, and it goes much deeper. Although he's very accessible, I find, as an author. He's a very good popular author, but he's super smart, too. So Dr. Peter Kraft, it's Kreeft. I've talked about him before on this program in my discussion about the sea a year or so ago, but Dr. Kraft's incredible, and but yeah, so it's spelled Kreeft, Kreeft, but it's pronounced Kraft. I think it's Swedish or something, or Swiss, I don't remember which. So Dr. Kraft is a professor of philosophy at Boston College, and I'm a great admirer of his, and he's so, I was excited when I found out that he has a book out just now. It just came out like a month or two ago on wonder. I'm like, okay, well, so I'm going to have to read that and do a book review on that in the future. But that's really what this show's about. So, I mean, I'll talk about Star Wars on here. I'll talk about comic books, Marvel movies. I'll talk about a life experience, book reviews, like I said, and just try to, think through it a little bit, or ask some questions, maybe not so much provide answers, but just give you some food for thought, maybe that you're not getting somewhere else. That's the goal. And I love to hear back from you guys. If you want to shoot me an email over at thegraciousguest@gmail.com. The website, that's what I was thinking, is thegraciousguest.org. So if you want to check out the podcast over there, you can go to the website, and I also have blog posts there and some other things there you can check out. The YouTube page too, if you search The Gracious Guest on YouTube, I've got some videos I'm starting to put out that they're really kind of snippets of like spiritual reflection. They tend to be, but they also relate to the show a little bit. So I might do some more with that in the future. That's kind of a goal of mine. So spread the word about the podcast. If you haven't subscribed yet already, do that. Go ahead and subscribe on the YouTube page. And if you can help me spread the word, it really helps me to be able to do this more, and I really do enjoy it. So enough of that background stuff. Let's get right down to business. Why you came here today, because you're wondering why in the world there's an episode out there called Relics and the Sandlot. Like, what is going on here? So let me just jump right in. The Sandlot is just so much fun, and I'm sure there's people. People out there who don't like it. Maybe you don't like it, or I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you didn't. But I think overall, in my life, I think the response to it from friends and family, and certainly myself over the years, has been positive. It's a fun movie. It's this isn't so much a super in-depth review of it per se. I want to focus on this one theme in particular. But The Sandlot, just by way of background, it's 25 years old somehow already. It came out in 1993, and I'm recording this podcast in October of 2018. So I thought it was younger than that. When I looked it up, I was surprised. I forgot it was that old. So it takes place in 1962, which which means, basically while they were filming it, it was being kind of in production and being filmed and everything. It was basically 30 years, to the day almost after the events in the film, depicted in the film, took place. But, and if most of you know this probably already, but, it's just, these kids, it's this sort of coming of age story. There's a lot of themes in it, like friendship, growing in relationship, search for meaning and belonging, all those kinds of things, and a lot of rite of passage stuff, in there. And also, I would argue, a very big theme about not judging a book by its cover. That crops up in a few different places. You probably already know some of the things I'm referring to, but yeah. So these kids, Scotty moves to the valley somewhere in California, I think, and it's 1962 in the summer of that year, and they're basically, or he at least is a rising sixth grader. He talks about how they just moved and that it was, a really lousy way to end up the fifth grade, and he's trying to make friends. He's kind of nerdy, doesn't know how to play baseball. He never learned, and that becomes a challenge when he encounters these boys that hang out at the local Sandlot, a little, common area kind of, behind a couple houses, this just sandy, nothing to look at kind of little baseball diamond. And, they're missing a guy that moved away. They're short a player, and he tries to join their team, and they make fun of him. And then one guy, Benny Rodriguez, looks out for him, and is he's of course the best player on the team too, and he ends up basically being the first person to really kind of become Scotty's friend. So that's kind of the backdrop, and of course the whole main thrust of the plot, it really deals with their relationship and this kind of coming of age story, but it's all revolving around this terrible event, this terrible event when, in desperation, because they hit their only baseball over the fence into the backyard of a guy that all the boys, they've all heard these stories over the years of how terrible Mr. Myrtle is, and he has this junkyard dog that they call the Beast, who supposedly ate a kid once who went over into the yard to get a baseball. And they tell Scotty the whole story in the tree house one night, and there's just all these. It's like this big urban legend about Mr. Myrtle, the evil, this evil, nasty old man and his dog that supposedly eats kids. So they lose their baseball. They can't get it. They're upset because they can't do anything. Scotty decides this is a great moment to try to, improve his situation with most of the guys on the team, and he's like, "I've got a ball." I'm like, "Go get it!" So he runs home. Well, the ball he goes to get is his stepdad's Babe Ruth signed baseball. And it's a big build-up at this point. Dennis O'Leary plays his dad, or his stepdad, and, he's an all right guy, but, as he says earlier in the movie, he says at that time, Bill, Dennis O'Leary's character, Scotty's stepdad, and Scotty's mom have only been married at this point for about a year, and that they were still getting used to each other at this time. And his stepdad rather, leaves for a business trip. Scotty runs back, grabs the Babe Ruth baseball, and Scotty has no idea who Babe Ruth is. As I said earlier, he wants to be good at baseball, but he doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't know how to play it. He doesn't even know who Babe Ruth was. So, of course, they run, gets there. Then he says to him, he says, "Your ball, your ups," So they go, and Scotty, big swing, and just crushes it right over the fence into Mr. Myrtle's backyard. And they're all hooting and hollering and cheering him because he hit a home run, and way to go, Smalls, And, of course, he's just ready to die. And there's that famous part, the kid's like, "What's wrong with you?" He's like, "We have to go get that ball back." And they're like, "Forget about it." And he goes, "But it was my stepdad's ball." They're like, "Well, forget about it, man. It's gone." And he's like, they're like, "Where did he get that ball?" And he's like, "I don't know. Some lady signed it." And they're like, "Some lady?" He goes, "Yeah, she wrote her name on it. It was Baby Ruth. Baby Ruth." So anyways, that's kind of, of course, the backdrop. And then it just leads to all these ridiculous, efforts that they make, and this huge effort to go retrieve this baseball, putting their lives on the line to go do it. And ultimately, the spoiler alert here, if you haven't seen it, you've had 25 years, so here we go. Well, long story short, Benny actually just jumps the fence and goes in and gets the ball after he has a dream where Babe Ruth, tells him that this is his moment to be courageous and everything, And they hint all the time that Benny's going to go on to big games. He's got a bright, shining baseball future, and this is going to be his the moment that he really sort of becomes famous, or that everything changes, this pivotal moment where he can go face to face and pickle the beast, you know? So there's a few scenes in the movie up to that point where Benny gets in pickles, like running between bases, and he's swift, and he gets it, you know, figures it out, and he's successful. You know, and getting to base, getting the run or whatever. And so he jumps the fence, runs in, and then right away, what's so cool is what I said about not judging a book by its cover. Well, the beast comes out, you know, and you see right away that there were scenes earlier where they showed the beast quickly in passing, like either in a flashback or when the boys are trying to get the ball back. And it's this clearly mechanical, like gigantic, like elephant-sized mastiff. And it's not real, and it's just this big, almost Muppet-looking monster you only see for a second. Well, when Benny goes in, and the real dog comes out, right away you see, like, he's a big dog. Mastiffs are enormous, but right off the bat, like, the veneer comes off a little bit, and it's like, okay, well, it's just a dog, you know? And then Benny races, gets the ball, gets out, and the beast busts the fence down and comes after him. So there's this hilarious scene, like, he's running all over town. And the big culmination is they get back in the yard, fence falls on the beast, the dog, you know, but you know, Scotty comes over and Benny helps him, and they lift up the fence. The dog comes out and just starts licking their face, and then he runs over to his stash, and all the boys come in. He's got a stash of like hundreds of baseballs, and he's just a big dog who loves baseball, you know. And then they meet Mr. Myrtle. They bring, you know, and you know, it turns out it's James Earl Jones. He's a former baseball player who has gone blind from a high fast, you know, pitch that made him blind. And they go in, and he's talking to him. He's got the ripped up Babe Ruth ball, and he goes to his cabinet and gets another ball out. He goes, "I'll trade you this one." And it turns out that the ball he wants to trade him has Babe Ruth's signature and all of the 1928 Yankees team, Murderers Row. It's got Lou Gehrig, like all these names on there. And it's so sweet because it basically, you know, they're saying, well, we can't trade you this. And he says, I'll tell you what. He goes, you come over here every week and talk baseball with me. You know, we'll call it an even trade. You know, and so he's this old baseball guy, but he's just alone. He's very lonely. Everyone thinks he's this mean old guy. And so that's, you know, so those are some themes that are big ones. But I just mentioned them in passing, you know, to kind of get to the broader one, which the one I want to focus on for a couple minutes here is the idea of relics. You know, relics. And this is, you know, connection as a Catholic. You know, a lot of people get this confused, or sometimes this will come up a lot. Like, if you don't know this, I'll just fill you in. Catholics have relics. And I'm not going to go into all the details, you know, about all the different kinds, but, you know, there's different levels of relics, first class, second class, all these kinds of things. There's, you know, if it's a first class relic, it's actually a part of a saint, you know, a saint's body, a bone, a tooth, you know, the head of John the Baptist. You know, there's all these kinds of traditions in the church. And some relics have a little more, you know, clear historical reliability maybe than some others. But, you know, there's miraculous healings associated with some of them. This is very biblical. It goes back to the Old Testament. It goes back to, you know, different healings and stuff that happen in the Bible, you know, in different places, or, you know, when even Peter's shadow, for example, at one point in the New Testament, you know, goes over, you know, Peter and Paul and these guys going around, the shadow hits a person who's sick, and they, you know, they have faith and they're healed. And, you know, I don't want to get into all that per se right now, but I just want to think about just the concept of a relic. And that it's so important. Like in the movie, you know, you think, okay, well, yes, it's this baseball and it's super valuable. But, you know, Scotty even makes the point. You know, at one point he describes it as a priceless piece of history, you know, or uses the word priceless. And I think it's important to think about this. Like, what gives something its value in your life? Do you ever really think about that? I mean, last night, my daughter, we had a trick-or-treat last night, and my great-aunt Judy gave my daughter Noelle, like, some candy, and then she slipped, like, $3 in her bucket, too, which is really sweet. And Noelle's almost 2. And then we go to my aunt and uncle's house, Jim and Lisa, my dad's brother Jim and my aunt Lisa, and you know, we're there visiting them, and we were the Flintstones. You know, I was Fred, and Christine was dressed up like Wilma. We had homemade costumes. Thank God for Pinterest. And then Noelle was Pebbles, and she was ridiculously adorable. And you know, she just comes in and she just starts. She goes in her bucket, and she's getting the candy, and then she pulls the $3 out and just goes and starts randomly handing them to people. And I was just laughing because I was like, you know, to her right now, like, money has literally no value whatsoever to Noelle. Like, she doesn't, you know, she doesn't care about money at all. What is she? Well, she loves candy, you know. She doesn't even like all of her toys. Like, there's some toys she likes, some she doesn't. There's some things that have value to her, some that don't. Well, it's like that for all of us to some degree. What do you value? For these boys in this movie, especially like Benny, and some of them, like at one point, there's a few lines in the movie, a few pieces of the narration that kind of bring me to this next point. But what they really get to is that for these boys, at least at this time in their lives, baseball was life for them. That baseball, and the team nature of it and the game itself, like baseball is really like their lives. It's like it's the ordering principle of their life. It's the glue that binds them all together. It's the thing that they all share in. It's the sort of, in a way, the kind of focal point of their friendship, of their relationship. And then beyond that, their connection out to the greater world of baseball and the history of baseball and these iconic figures, these great heroes that they have. So what happens when there's a piece of that history, a piece of that fabric, a piece of that connection, namely this baseball that's been autographed by Babe Ruth himself? It's a link of from them to him, And when that's in jeopardy or that's threatened, like they're willing to put their lives on the line to go save it. And it seems crazy, like when you really break it down and start thinking, it's like, it's just a baseball. It's like, no, yeah, but it's not. It's more than just a baseball to them. In a sense, it's like there's some of them in that baseball because it represents something so much bigger that they have sort of invested their whole lives into. And so I guess what I'm saying here is there's a line actually when Babe Ruth visits Benny in his dream, to give him the encouragement to go face up against the beast. He says to him, he's telling him about like these things that have happened in the story up to that point that are like little hints that Benny has to do this. These little signs, these little omens that this is going to be a big moment for him. And Babe Ruth says to him, "Someone's telling you something, kid, and if I was you, I'd listen." There's this idea of almost like this divine intervention. I don't want to overplay the hand here, but, that Benny has a destiny, in particular. That these boys have a destiny, but Benny has like this special role to play in this story that he's being called to. Like, he's making his own decisions, absolutely. He's free. He can choose to not follow it. But there's a calling. Like, Benny is part of a story that's greater than him. And this is his moment to choose to be part of it or to just let it slip by, So that's really cool, too, that sort of destiny theme. And I've talked about that theme, too, like in the Star Wars, plot line and that kind of stuff as well. And that comes up from time to time when thinking about wonder, because it's like you can't just put it under a microscope. It's mysterious. It's bigger than us. And we know that. There's just something in our hearts, we know that there's more going on around us than meets the eye. I'm part of something. It's not. It's there's a synergy. It's my life is not ultimately just about me. I'm not even the main character in my own story in a sense. Like, I'm part of a bigger story. So all that mystery is just really cool. And I think and it's. For a movie that's pretty cut and dry, like pretty simple to follow, pretty basic, like I think there's some deep themes in it. And I just want to kind of back to the relics thing. In Catholic theology, this would be under the sort of umbrella of what's called sacramental. Not the sacraments, like with a capital S that you hear if you're not Catholic, the things like the Eucharist or matrimony, baptism. Like there's the seven sacraments, which are, these special moments, these rituals, these aspects of Catholic life that we believe that Jesus, sort of raised these things up to a level of the ability to communicate his love and his grace, his saving grace in a very real and tangible way, but basically it's a way that it's working behind the scenes. We can't always see the total effect of how it's transforming our lives, but he uses visible, tangible things like water, or like oil in certain sacraments like confirmation and stuff like that, or the Eucharist, like the bread and the wine literally are transformed by God's power into his actual body and blood, like his presence, his life that then dwells in us. So that's the big capital S idea of like the specific Catholic, the seven sacraments. But in a lowercase way, the Catholic Church teaches that basically the entire universe is sacramental. And what do I mean by that? Well, a sacrament is something that basically makes, makes something intangible tangible in a way. So in other words, like we would say that, the creation, the creating act, the power behind what we can see and detect, and I'm not just talking visible sight. I'm talking any ability to see or measure some material thing. Okay, well, behind that is the greater sort of power that is generating that thing, that is making that thing come into existence. That basically we see veils, we say, that the whole universe is essentially a veil, but behind that veil, behind the visible reality around us, is the invisible, eternal reality that God creates and generates and makes the universe, out of love. So within that, like relics, what's so cool is, then you bring that down to, like, from the Catholic experience, like a relic, in a sense, a relic is so incredible to sort of see, so incredible to be close to, and why Catholics sometimes I'll have relics, like I'll have one on, like, my desk, or there's relics in churches. And the whole idea is it's not some sort of morbid, bizarre, ghastly tradition. It's all about connecting with, those who have gone before us, connecting with the saints who we're trying to emulate. Having this tangible connection with our heroes, the people that help us to get our act together, to be our very best, the people that inspire us to live out life according to our ordering principle, which in our case, is our faith in God, our faith and our thanksgiving to God for sending his son into our world to take on our sins and to pay the price for our sins and to save us from the rejection that we embraced, the rejection of God. So back to the Sandlot, I just think there's a really cool connection there, I think, as a Catholic, that these boys in this movie, it's this beautiful, it's very similar, the idea for them, that they have this wonderful, good, organizing principle in their lives at their, stage when they're like 12 years old, 13 years old, that they come together, they're a team, they have their ups and downs, they have their good days, their bad days, they learn together, they grow together in relationship, and that they unite in this mission centered around this relic, in this movie, this relic that connects them with their great hero Babe Ruth and with their other heroes as well, that makes them feel part of something bigger, something beyond themselves, something that they can strive to be brought into and to be a part of themselves, and that they learn from that and they grow from that. So anyways, that's just, call me crazy. I don't know. I've been thinking for like a year. I was like, I want to do something like Relics and the Sandlot, the baseball. And it's just been on my mind forever. And it's taken me, till episode 54. I mean, I only thought of it probably when I was in the 40s on episodes, but I wanted it to kind of just throw that out there at you today and just see what you think. I would love your guys' feedback on this. I have a new Facebook page, by the way, for my website for the whole Gracious Guest thing. So if you go over to Facebook now, too, The Gracious Guest on Facebook, you'll find me there. My website, thegraciousguest.org. Twitter, @gracious_guest. The show, of course, is on iTunes. It's on Podbean. Please tell your friends. Share this episode if you know someone who likes baseball or they're Catholic or they're just interested in maybe this particular topic, just as something a little bit different, share it with them. Feel free to spread the word, and hopefully that might get them thinking, might generate an interesting discussion. So hit me up over at thegraciousguest@gmail.com if you want to send me a direct email, or like I said, on any of those social media efforts. Also on YouTube, The Gracious Guest. I'm everywhere, man. Just come and talk to me. I want to hear from you guys. So thank you so much, Gracious Gang. You are my listeners. You are my friends out there. I'm so happy that you tuned in today. And until next time, don't forget to wonder. Take care.